Hi, this is Unsuitable with Mary B. Seyfried, the podcast where I interview single Christians about their lives and faith. Welcome to the final series of the season. I have 3 dynamite conversations for y'all that focus on the theme of work. First up is Ian Quinlan. Ian is a New York-based actor who has been acting from a young age. Recently, he has worked on a couple of exciting film and TV projects, including The Long Road Home, Orange is the New Black, Gotham, and Sneaky Pete, acting opposite Bryan Cranston. He's currently shooting on the upcoming show Jupiter's Legacy. Ian has also worked as an actor, director, and writer for the ABC Discovers Talent Showcase for 3 years. His notable directing credits include assistant director to Philip Seymour Hoffman in the workshop of Family for All Occasions at the Labyrinth Theater. As a child actor, he was in The Lion King on Broadway, as well as the film Music of the Heart, acting opposite Meryl Streep. Ian and I talk about the uncertainties that come with being a working actor and the role Ian's faith plays in how he approaches his work. I think you'll really relate to what he shares, so let's get to it. Hi, Ian. Welcome to the Unsuitable podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thanks for making the time on this gorgeous fall day, and I know you have a busy schedule. You just got back in town.
Yeah.
From Toronto, doing a shoot, which is very exciting for you, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's really a lot of fun. It's colder up there. It's actually a really great fall day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm having a blast up there in Toronto.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a superhero show. So, it's like you do weird gestures to show off your powers. Nothing happens, and they call cut, and you go back.
Yeah.
And do it all over again. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I love watching behind the scenes footage from the Marvel movies, and just how ridiculous Wanda looks because she has the when it's in the finished movie, it's all of the red stuff coming out of her hands, but everyone's doing backflips and all this stuff, and she's just standing there
it's like happy
dancing.
Hands.
Yeah.
Interpretive dance with her hands.
Yeah.
It's all wrist action.
Yeah.
That's why I love watching the new X-Men movies. I literally watch the new X-Men movies just to see Michael Fassbender shake furiously, he's trying to lift a helicopter with hhis body. And it's just so fun to watch. It must be just amazing to watch that when you're on set. I would love to be there one day.
Oh my God. It's it's hard to imagine how it all worked before CGI. And when they're creating all of this stuff and all of these effects, but there's no green screen, right?
Yeah.
So it's just I don't know. I don't know how all of that works at all.
Yeah, the Ninja Turtles, I think they were in, those were rubber suits and they were half puppetry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were just in 90-degree heat in basically a rubber oven for however many months it took for them to shoot. It's nuts.
Joys of acting. Yeah, because from what I understand, I was never in film acting, but from what I understand, it's a lot of waiting around.
Oh yeah.
And so I can just imagine just baking in some sort of ridiculous rubber costume.
Yeah, we have one guy like that. He's I can't say too much about it, but he's in full gear. He's a big villain, and there's no fly. There's no fly for him. So he literally has to minimal water, minimal food.
Yeah.
Because he can't go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
For 12 hours.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That reminds me of working in a restaurant. I also could not use the bathroom, but for different reasons of just being really busy.
Yeah.
So
on your feet.
I feel for that guy in that situation. Well, speaking of acting, I know you've been acting for a long time, so I would love to hear about what drew you to acting and how you got started and your journey
For
there.
sure, yeah. I was actually a child actor. I've been acting literally all my life. It started when my mom said that she used to walk by my room as a kid and would hear all these voices coming from inside, and then she would open the door and I'd just be standing there with a towel cape on and all my action figures lined up in a clearly an action sequence, and I'd be like, shut the door.
Don't worry about it, Mom.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just creative. I'm not possessed, just creative.
Yeah.
So she got me into commercials. So I was doing commercial work for a while.
Okay.
As early as 5. And was doing that for a little bit. And then I was like a child actor. I did a film with Meryl Streep when I was 12 called Music of the Heart, because I also played violin growing up.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
It was a violin movie. I actually had 2 auditions for that. It was one through my music school, because they were looking for students who actually could play music to play her actual students.
Oh.
And then I had an audition for it through my manager at the time. And so when I showed up and like I could act and play music, they were like, "Oh, great. Like it's a huge wait up for, yeah, you're in." It's like we've been looking for you. So it's like when you're right for the role, you're right for the role.
Yeah.
And then I was in The Lion King. But, for a while I actually thought, I went to a very rigorous high school and middle school. I went to the Dalton School, which is, to give you a point of reference, it's mentioned in Gossip Girl.
Oh.
The Devil Wears Prada. That's where Meryl Streep's character's kids go.
Okay.
And American Psycho.
Oh.
Yeah.
So full range of individuals who would attend the Dalton School.
Yeah. So I was for a while thinking I was going to be a producer, actually. I was going to go to school for business and theater and then produce. And over the course of high school, I was doing the plays there. And, my teacher was like, "Do you want to be an actor or do you want to be an artist?" And I was like, "What's the difference?" And it was really informative for me. And that's really kind of where the passion started, that question. So I was like, because it's not just acting, it's like, it's being a storyteller. It's conveying these emotions that we all feel. And not necessarily emotions, but these experiences that we all feel. It's about conveying stories that we can empathize with. It's the art of empathy. And so for me, it's not just about being an actor anymore. It's about, I write now, I direct. I'd like to produce eventually, still have that dream.
Right.
And they're all catalysts towards the same end. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that I had to learn when I moved to the city and started taking acting classes, which I have a performance degree and I never had an acting class because opera, what? So what I noticed when I started studying acting and had like a really good acting teacher, I think he was really good. I don't have a frame of reference, but I think he was good, was how like in touch with your own feelings and like how much in your body you had to be. Whereas for me, I like think of, I don't know, acting as like manufacturing something, or like I would find myself overthinking everything and trying to like force some sort of emotion or reaction or whatever. But like, what my teacher said was that it's more about like being in your body and reacting to what is happening to you in the moment.
Yeah. It's like you can keep thinking about all the creative or interesting choices, or you can do what we do in real life, which is like you take your next impulse off what you've been given by the other person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's ironic. It's like, it's a delicate balance when especially when I have to remind myself of this all the time when I'm prepping. It's like the difference between preparation and overthinking. You know what I mean? It's like you can like think about what's going on in the story, like what are the events, what's happening, who is this person I'm talking to, what is our relationship? And then you can be like, oh, but what if I do this, and what if I do that, and what if this happens? And like once you start getting into that space, you're kind of focusing more on yourself, and you're not really living. It's like because in reality, you're never really thinking about what you're doing, or when you are, you're trying to stop because you're probably having a panic attack.
Yeah.
or you're full of anxiety. It's like,
what
am I doing with my hands? My hands are so weird. Like, I don't.
Right.
Yeah. Like.
Right. It's like you can't really be incredibly self-conscious when you're like acting, I think, because in real life you're not. I mean, there are moments when we are, well, I mean, like for me, I'm self-conscious many times throughout the day and throughout my life. But I think for most people, like our most human moments are when we're not like obsessively overanalyzing everything that we're doing, but we're just like there experiencing the moment. Yeah. And I think from what I understand in acting, if you're like over analyzing it, like can read as being overly self-conscious, which is not honest to the story or the character.
Yeah. It's about, did you ever read Tim Keller's book, The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness?
Yeah. I did read that one.
That was liberating for me.
Oh my gosh.
That was so good. I was like, oh yeah, I don't really need to think about myself as much as I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was very liberating.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's been a while since I read that book. For people who haven't read it, can you kind of talk about what that book meant to you and what was so liberating about it?
Yeah, for sure. I think so first of all, it's a quick read. It's like 50 pages.
Yeah.
It reads like a Tim Keller sermon. It's really nice. He kind of talks about how people deal with anxiety, but also, I wouldn't say narcissism, but sort of self-obsession. You know what I mean? And so there's the critical judgment when we're being really critical of ourselves and we're always thinking about how we can be better and we're kind of focusing on being something else in a sort of self-critiquing way. And then or you're sort of full of yourself and you're kind of boasting about yourself all the time. And in both cases, it's sort of a trap because you're constantly trying to, it's self-obsession towards perfection. You know, you're trying to be something that you think you're not. And what he says is that, like, the acknowledgement of having Christ in your life and having a personal relationship with God is the freedom of knowing that you are fully seen and fully loved as you are right now in this moment. And that anything you face in your life is not a reflection of your status or quality or character as a person. That the things you face in life are really part of God's plan for you. Challenges to prepare you, ways to build you up, ways to build your character, even mistakes you make to learn and be better. And that you can trust in that you can trust God and you trust in the fact that he has your back. And that's a liberating thing. Therefore, you don't need to focus on yourself so much. You're actually, once again, focusing more on like what God is trying to tell you, which kind of is like related to acting. That's what's helpful for me. It's like, stop talking so much, stop trying to get your point across so much, and listen, because that's where you're going to get the inspiration from.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I gotta reread that. I was like, oh yeah, that was all in there. And that is like very real for, you know, my everyday life. More on the end of like anxiety and like if I don't keep control over all of my actions and like actively work to make myself better, then like what I don't know what's gonna happen. Like I don't necessarily trust that it's gonna be okay. That like making mistakes is like acceptable for me as a person, even though like it's a person, like a human thing
completely
to make mistakes. But there's like part of me that is like somehow like like that's fine for everyone else, but for me, like somehow my mistakes are going to be bigger and more terrible and all of that, which is like not accurate.
Right. And we think we think we're going to be the exception to the rule because we're special. You know what I mean? Like, no, but okay, you did it that way, but me, I'm gonna do it bigger.
But you don't understand. But you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like Jesus, I know you know everything, but like I need to explain this to you.
That's real. Yeah. That is so real.
But yeah, to bring it back to acting, I can imagine that would be a very liberating way to pursue it. And yeah.
That I was talking to somebody too, because this is like this person calls it the upper limit problem. Where like, and this is I think a perspective for somebody who doesn't have God in their life. It's like when things are going well, you're afraid when the other shoe's gonna fall.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Brene Brown calls it foreboding joy.
Foreboding joy, great. Yeah, I love that expression. And I think that when it comes to acting, people, when it's going well, people are afraid they're going to mess it up. And when they're trying to perform in a scene, they're trying to get it right. And again, that's a sign of control. And wherever you are in your career, I have to remind myself of this too. It's like wherever I am in my career, it's exactly where God wants me to be, and there's a reason why I'm here. You know what I mean? We could talk more about this later, but like a time when it was like not so great, and then now it's going really well, and I get afraid sometimes of like, am I going to mess this up? Am I going to squander the gift that God gave me? Am I going to fail? You know, fear of failure is always real, but then it's the idea that like the challenges you are given are ones where he is preparing you for something, you know what I mean? And it's hard to trust that, and it's hard to believe that. And it's like, but that's the everyday thing.
Yeah.
And then in the scene, again, trying to get it right. And it's remembering that this choice I made to be in this job, this career that I chose, was to actually tell stories and to show, the power of grace, the power of like resurrection. You know what I mean? That's what you want. You're watching an arc of somebody like going into the darkest parts of themselves and then coming out and being victorious, or maybe not, or that's what stories are. It's about the human experience.
Yeah.
And whether they're with God or not.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's been something I was thinking about. It's like these things that we go through every day. And so in the scene, it's like I'm always thinking about like trying to get to the heart of the matter. So even when I'm working on a scene, when I'm prepping for something, because we're talking about the human experience, we're talking about these deep feelings that we all feel and how we relate to one another. So sometimes I have to remind myself, like, oh, just remember, Ian, this person might not be a Christian that you're playing.
Right.
So you have to see like what their experience of life would be like without God and how they're dealing with it. And that's sort of like trying to convey that to like that empathetic moment of like, we all sharing what these feelings that we all feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, speaking about roles and whatnot, could you tell me about your favorite role that you've played, or maybe your favorite project you've been involved in?
Yeah. So I'm laughing because it was a really tremendous experience. I did this show 2 years ago called The Long Road Home.
Yeah.
It was for National Geographic. It was telling the story of an event that happened during the war in Iraq, known as Black Sunday. It took place on April 4th, 2004. So it's a real story. It's a real thing that happened. Basically, after Bush declares mission accomplished in the war in Iraq, America goes to the Middle East thinking they're on a peacekeeping mission to kind of restore order and to rebuild the country. And this particular battalion was stationed in Sadr City, Iraq. And they didn't bring any armored vehicles. So they didn't bring any tanks. They didn't bring any of their heavy artillery because they thought it was a peacekeeping mission.
Right.
Little did they know that the night of the transfer of chain of command, there was they had scheduled a coup for the entire town. The entire town had been radicalized.
Yeah.
And basically, there was one platoon caught behind enemy lines while the entire town had guns and were just shooting the place up. And so it was about the rescue mission. But I got to live on a military base for 4 months. And I got to meet the families and the actual soldiers we were playing. And I lived with like 20 dudes. It was like 20 guys of like who were all playing these soldiers. And it was a phenomenally rewarding experience. It was very moving, but it was also just wonderful to be with these guys. The way I describe it is like, imagine a fraternity that respected women.
It's a bit of a stretch.
I know, it's a hard reach to get there, but if you can.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it was like, we all had our own houses on the military base.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to do on the military base except for workout. And then, so we just got together and would play like Settlers of Catan every night.
Right.
And then barbecue. We literally bought a grill, like a big old industrial grill. And then we like had to, somebody from the supermarket who was so nice. She's like, "Oh, I have my pickup truck. I'll drive you."
Oh my god.
To the military base. And it was like, she just helped us out like that. Yeah.
Texas. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. So how did your faith inform the way you approached that role?
Yeah. So I was playing the son of a Gold Star family. So for those of people who don't know what that is, a Gold Star family is someone who has lost a family member. I'm sorry, I get emotional even just talking about it. A Gold Star family is a family who has lost a loved one in war. Sometimes we think of it as like, it's because it sounds like a Platinum Plus member, like something that gets you like priority
Perks and stuff.
Yeah, and it's not that. It's like it's this honor that really the families don't want.
Right.
They'd rather have their loved one back. So I took that as a big responsibility.
Yeah.
So even before I got there, I was like, oh, this is a big deal. And the mother, Sylvia, had friended me on Instagram or followed me on Instagram. And I was like, oh man, like this is real. This is really happening. and I prayed about it, and I was like, Lord, please don't make this like, I don't want to be a Hollywood actor. I don't want to be, don't let this project make me vain. Don't let me get an inflated ego. Use me to contribute to this project to make it something special. And so I was like, and I was like, I wasn't sure if I should reach out to the mother, talk to them. I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I prayed about that, and I was like, if you want me to do it, like, you will show me the way. Literally day 2, the showrunner comes up to me. He goes, Ian, would you like to meet the family? Because they're all dying to meet you. Oh my God. I was like, yeah. He goes, by the way, they have a big family. Do you mind if they all come? I was like, sure.
Yeah.
So I'm freaking out about this. And like, I was like, have them come over we were having a barbecue that day. Me and the cast. It was like our first time we're all together. But I invited them over for lunch prior. And I asked the showrunner to show up too. And just to say, like, just to be there as a sort of, help facilitate conversation in case it gets awkward, you know? So who came was Sylvia, Gilbert, his brother. By the way, I should say I played Robert Arciaga. That's his name. So Sylvia, his mother, came. Gilbert came. Gilbert's wife and 2 kids came. I talked to Angel, his sister, over the phone. She couldn't make it because she lived too far away. But anyway, so I'm cooking, I'm stressing. I'm like trying to do a good thing. I want to make it nice for them.
Yeah.
And so they show up, and they're so lovely. She made tortillas and salsa, and it was fantastic. And we started talking, and just sort of let Robert come into the room when we were all ready to talk about it. And as we sat down for lunch, I was like, do you mind if I pray for this meal? And just something I do for every meal. And she was like, oh yeah, I'd love that, because she's a Christian. And I just did that. I just kind of prayed for the project, prayed for this time, and like that meant a lot to them.
Yeah.
And then they came to the barbecue, and I was like, you should stay for the barbecue. And then what I hadn't realized until later was, because people started coming up to me asking me about that. They were like, "Did you pray with the family?" Like, word had gotten out, and I was like, "Yeah," and they were like, "That's really beautiful." People were really moved by that. Christians who were also actors on the show would come up to me in private and be like, I'm really inspired by the fact that you're so public with your faith. And that was sort of like a crazy thing. And I realized, like, that's what God did. Like, in the aftermath of it all, I was like, oh, you literally did it by just having me do what I do every day. Like, just a prayer had this ripple effect.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like really moving for me. I was like, and it was months later. It was like, you know, we started shooting in March, and it wasn't until like July that I realized that God did that. And it's sort of, that's how it works. It's like, you don't realize till after the fact.
Yeah. That's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, the everyday aspect of what you said, how like so much of our faith, I don't know, I think I used to, maybe just because of my like background in performing, I'm drawn to like really dramatic things. But, you know, I used to think of God working and moving in only these like really big, grand like gestures and big dramatic moments. But how powerful it is when it was really powerful for me to realize that so much of, even if there is a big dramatic moment, it's built in the little everyday things that we do and the ways that we meet God in our everyday.
Right.
And how we just invite him into those little moments and watch what happens.
Yeah. This might be too far to say, but like, I mean, it's true. God is the greatest storyteller ever.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And we keep thinking of him as like a Michael Bay film. Like, it's like boom, explosions, cameras moving, like people whirling around. You think it's gonna be like this big sign.
Yeah, right.
And it's like so much more subtle. Like he's really good. Like, I mean, this was just literally a little prayer.
Yeah.
Had this massive effect. And like he's always worked like that. You know what I mean? That's like that's the whole story. All the stories in the Bible are about how he takes the unconventional route and turns your expectations up on their heads to kind of really get you to see how he does things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you think about how relatively limited Jesus's life was, how like he was a guy living in a small area, and he just like did these amazing things, but he didn't like travel the world. He didn't like travel very far outside of his immediate surroundings. And yet, you know, just by practicing and doing all of the stuff that he, you know, that God wanted him to do, it created this whole big movement, you know, that Jesus was very faithful to his immediate surroundings.
Yeah.
And, you know, through that, and obviously, you know, other divine mysteries that we don't understand necessarily, but just like had this huge effect on everyone around him, and it spread, and there was these massive crowds who would come to find him.
Yeah.
It's a really amazing thing to think about, and like also a very humbling thing for me to think about, because I think Anne Lamott says that grace is like when we run out of good ideas. I like to think of myself as a person with a lot of really good ideas, and I get very excited about all my big, good, ambitious ideas.
Right, yeah.
And then having those moments where I realize that it's not about that. Like God still works through all of those things, but like grace is when I'm not asking for it or looking for it or expecting it or wanting it even. It's just, it's there underlying, you know, it's like a river going underneath everything that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many times I feel like people trying to, or I do it too. I should speak from the I perspective. Like trying to interpret God's will for your life is like trying to figure out who done it in the movie. Yeah. Like stop spoiling it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just watch the movie. Like let it unfold before your eyes.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I think that's it. Just let it unfold. You know what I mean? It's hard to just sit, relax, and just enjoy the show.
Yeah. You know, it feels like a big risk to let all of that go, all of my illusion of control go. And it feels very vulnerable, and it is, but also it's like I'm giving over control and I'm giving over my trust to the person who defines trust, the being who defines trust.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really not that big of a risk, but it feels like a really big risk.
It really does. It really, really does. Yeah. Like, man, you talk about risk. The whole thing, I mean, you're an opera singer. I mean, like, I don't know how you do that, man. It's like...
Well, I don't really do that anymore.
But still.
But
yeah, right.
I do other kinds of singing, but yeah. Anyways, continue.
Totally, yeah.
Just factual check for everyone out there, so they're not thinking that I'm performing operas and doing all of this.
Well, you also... I mean, she can do it all. Don't listen to her.
Just gonna sit over here and have a panic attack.
But like, yeah, taking risks, like, so like, you know, venturing into a new project, you know, like starting this podcast, you know, or like, or for me, it's like this career choice is a risk in and of itself. There's feast and there's famine. Like, oh boy. Like, I mean, I literally thought about quitting recently, like straight up. Like I thought I started to say like, this felt like a heroin addiction. Like you're chasing the dragon, like you're every audition, like maybe it's this one, you know, like you're gonna hit the lottery, you know, and it kind of becomes like you're looking for other people's approval. You know, you're not because of like insecurity. Like I was looking, like you want the casting director to cast you,
right?
That's what you want. It's like you know, they are the gatekeeper to your financial stability. To your to what you believe is your vocation, to what I believe is my vocation, you know, and so I was just like in a really rough time at the beginning of the year, and it was like going through the motions. I mean, acting was sort of the only thing that was keeping me going for a little while there, where I was like, I'd literally just go into the audition and like do my song and dance, and then like walk out and be like, ugh. And it's funny you talk about like, freedom and letting go of control because, so we go to the same church, you and I, and they were doing that whole segment on Exodus.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was like the best time sermon series.
Right? It was so
Every
good.
single week was like fire.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
They really know how to spit fire. I really dig them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, by the way, I would recommend it to everybody. It was like, it's what was it, like a 9-part series?
Something like that.
But yeah, so.
I think you can get it on gospelandlife.com probably.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested.
It's really good. So I'll tell you, just to give you a quick log line of it. It took 4 days for the Jewish people to leave Egypt, but it took 40 years for Egypt to leave them.
Yeah.
So you have people who are like institutionally, systemically enslaved and have never actually known what freedom looks like.
Yeah.
To have the freedom of choice. And so it took 40 years for God to actually teach them what that looks like and to build that relationship with them.
Yeah.
So, one thing that they talked about was like, manna from heaven, like how every day God provided food for them, like bread. And on the day before the Sabbath, you'd have 2 days worth. So everybody had exactly what they needed. Everybody had enough.
Yeah.
And that was about teaching them how to daily trust that God would provide their needs. And like, so, dude, I was like praying hard that whole time. I was like, help me. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And what would happen was like, so I was teaching a little bit. I was like coaching acting. I teach part-time, actually at Dalton.
There you go. Full circle.
Right? Coming back. Sometimes it makes me feel like an X-Men. Like I do what I do and then I teach what I do. So I'm teaching and I'm coaching acting and then like picking up little odd jobs here and there. And literally like every day when I didn't know when my next paycheck was coming in, like something when I get a call like, hey, I have an audition, do you mind coaching me?
Yeah.
Or like, hey, this is happening, do you mind helping me out? And I was like, talking to Abe, our pastor, about it. I was like, dude, like this is a manna from heaven kind of situation.
Yeah.
And then there was one particular sermon which was crazy. It was all about the promised land, which was like, what is your promised land? What does it look like? Is God there with you? Is Jesus there with you?
Oh yeah.
Remember,
I remember that one.
Yeah. It was like a really convicting would you rather. It was like, would you rather have everything you've ever asked for, but not have Jesus in your life? Or would you rather have none of that and have a personal relationship with him? And that was really hard. Yeah. And I was like thinking about it because I was like, things were not going well. Bank account was crap. I wasn't eating. I had lost 12 pounds in 6 weeks. I was like just really not eating and couldn't get out of bed some days. And I had to pray about it. I was like, God, are you asking me to quit? I'm like, am I supposed to quit and maybe just like be a teacher? Are you telling me like is it like a Moses kind of situation where like I'm gonna lead people there, but my feet will never touch there? And like I had to really sit with that, and it was hard. And I was like, okay, like if that's what you want, like it's gonna be hard. It's gonna suck for a while, but if that's where you're calling me to be, I got to do that. Yeah. And then I booked a superhero TV show. The biggest show filming in Canada, maybe arguably the North America, for Netflix. Yeah. It's called Jupiter's Legacy, by the way. And it felt like God was saying, like, no, I just needed to know that you knew that I got you and that, like, you only need me. That all this is superfluous regardless. It's like, and I wept. Like, I wept. Yeah. Tears of joy. That it felt like it was finally over, Yeah. And like, I was back to where I needed to be, which was like with him in his presence, Yeah. So that was a really big deal for me. Yeah. And so, obviously, it's amazing to get to play a superhero, to be in a superhero show. Yeah. And it's obvious. It's great to be a working actor. Finally. Yay. I mean, like I've had some success, but like it's good to be back on this side of things. Right. But really, that moment was really bigger than anything. Yeah. Like, God has never felt more real in my life than now. And so the work is just gravy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Because, like, whatever your job is, it's not who you are.
Yeah.
It's not what determines your status and your worth as a person. And it's not how God sees you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm very achievement oriented, and my work is obviously super personal and super missional, and so it's hard for me to kind of separate myself from my work in a lot of ways, and just kind of being geared towards like performance in general. So a lot of what you were saying was really resonating, but it's hard. Like the risk element in there where you feel like you're in the desert and nothing's working out. Nothing is like going like you thought it would. I mean, like for me, you know, like moments where it feels like I am speaking into a void and nobody is paying attention and nothing that I do matters because it's like I'm not, you know, getting this overnight sensation response that the achiever in me wants.
Right. Yeah.
So it can feel like in those moments, for me personally, I'm like, what am I doing? I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Should I be doing something else? Like, God, I don't know where you are in this. I don't know if this is going to pan out. And like, when I think about it, you know, it's easy for me to get overwhelmed because I'm taking on, I feel like the work and the success and the whatever, however this is all going to pan out is all on me. And I get really overwhelmed. I get really like, I start working too much and not resting. I start, you know, I have like all of these signs where I know it's happening, but I like have trouble stopping myself. But when you're in that desert kind of mindset where you just don't know if the risk is going to pan out, and even not knowing what pan out even means necessarily, because it might not end in success.
Right.
You know, it might not end in booking the big gig. It might not end in whatever. But like getting to a point where you learn that it's not about any of that.
Yeah.
Right? It's about being obedient to the moment that you're in and not knowing which way it's going to go, but knowing that no matter how it goes and no matter how I feel, God is still faithful.
Right.
God is still present in spite of what I believe and understand, and trusting that if things do pan out the way I want them to, it'll be the right time. And trusting that if they don't pan out at all, that will also be okay. Right. That maybe there was some other thing that some other work that God was trying to do in me through this whole experience.
Totally. Yeah, it's yeah. I'm always afraid of mediocrity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I did all this work and I want to be successful at it.
Right.
I
want something to show for it.
I want to prove.
I want people to think that I'm like smart and good and whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know what it is for you. We all have our own
Same
things.
thing. Yeah, it's all of it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's, but I have to remind myself that like, now I'm doing something for external forces, be it approval or proof of my own self-worth to others, you know? And that whatever it's like trusting that whatever you're doing, regardless of the outcome, is like, what you said, like being obedient to the moment. Like trusting that this is exactly where you got to be right now.
Yeah.
This is exactly where God wants you to be. And you're there with him.
Yeah.
Like you're having a conversation with him. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's like, that's been like my prayer life. It's been like, what am I doing right now? And he's like, just finish it. Yeah. Just keep going. You'll see. You'll see eventually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's the point. It's like again, like a movie or a story. It's like, there's a point in the story where the person doesn't know where it's going and then it happens. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to stop trying to spoil your own movie for yourself. You know? Yeah. God's writing a story for you. You're co-authoring something, and he's writing something for you, and he wants, and like, let yourself be surprised.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And like thinking about, if we're going to go along with this metaphor, which I really like, thinking about what role am I putting myself in this like story of my life? Am I like an actor and a co-author, or do I see myself as a director and a producer and like, the person running sound and the person, doing all of the person running the craft services table? Am I like do I see myself as doing absolutely everything because I think that I know how this is supposed to go?
Right. And is it like, and where is God in this whole thing? Is he just commissioned? Is he just the writer you hired?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is it like, write it like the way I want you to write it?
Yeah.
Or are you going to let him tell the story?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, part of that desert experience is it forces me to be really honest about how I see God's role in my life.
Yeah.
It strips away all of the like very nice right answers that I have about how I think I should feel. And is like, nope, this is where you actually are. This is what you actually believe. This is how you actually feel about God. And, knowing that he's still there in all of it, he still loves me in all of it is like, has been a really weird thing for me to kind of adjust my perspective. That it's been a thing that has adjusted my perspective in a way that I don't think that I would have expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of last questions for you.
Yeah.
One is, tell me one thing that's hard right now and one thing that's great.
Ooh, okay. One thing that's hard. Trusting. Honestly. Trusting God. It's an everyday process.
Yeah.
With like everything. And things are great. There's a lot of great right now.
Good.
So yeah, like I said, I'm on this show called Jupiter's Legacy for Netflix.
Great.
It's like superheroes, supervillains, people fighting each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be crazy cool. The comic book writer is Mark Miller, who wrote a bunch of really great things. Like, so when he was working for Marvel, he wrote the Civil War story.
Okay.
Which I loved. And then he also did like Ultimates and Ultimate X-Men, which I loved as well. Like I fiended on those as a kid. And then now he branched up and did his own thing, and it's like he's got some really great stuff. And so
nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So people can look for that at some point, and I'm sure that you will post about it on social media.
Oh, absolutely.
When you have a date. So why don't you tell people where they can follow you?
Yeah, so I'm at All I Do Is Quinn on Instagram. Only one N.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
I'm glad you had a good time. I did too.
Yeah.
Huge thanks to Ian for being here. For updates on Jupiter's Legacy, follow Ian on Instagram at allidoisquinn. Thanks for listening. Thoughts, comments, and questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram at maryb.safrit or head over to my website, marybsafrit.com, and drop me a line. Theme music is by Chad Rollinson and sound editing by Andrew Kim. Unsuitable with Mary B. Safrit is copyright 2019, Mary B. Safrit LLC, all rights reserved.